April the 2nd, 2022. Guys, in the book of Revelations, we talked about the seven trumpets. And I mentioned that a lot of times in battle, those trumpets will be one after the other very quickly, whether it's attack, left flank, move right, move left, retreat, whatever it is. Sometimes they are back to back. And that's what we're seeing right now. This is as of 7:36 p.m. tonight. End of dollar. India uses rupees rather than U.S. dollar for international trade. 18 countries agree to trade in this international rupee. Following the U.S. Federal Reserve's sharpest tightening in monetary policy in decades, all part of the plan, India has offered its currency as an alternative for trade to nations that are experiencing a shortage of dollars, coming from Bloomberg. As a result of Joe Biden's disastrous economic policies, there are now coordinated efforts to weaken the global reliance on the U.S. dollar. We've been talking about this for a while, now we're seeing it. India's new foreign trade policy took effect yesterday, according to Reuters. It says India is prepared to trade in rupees with nations facing a shortage of dollars so as to disaster-proof them and effectively boost its exports. This is coming from the Commerce Secretary in New Delhi. So the measure includes industry-specific targets to go from $2 trillion and trade from $770 billion. That was expected. India is also launching a new amnesty scheme for one-time settlement of defaults on export obligations. The scheme, which aims for faster resolution of trade disputes, will run until September 2023, but will not apply to cases involving fraud investigations. India's new policy will also automate some trade approvals and cut charges for medium-sized and small businesses to secure some government-backed benefits. They're kind of doing what we should have been doing here in the U.S., except we're hell-bent on internal destruction. It says that India's Minister of State for Finance said that the Reserve Bank of India has approved the opening of special rupee Vostro accounts of correspondent banks from 18 countries in 60 separate cases. The countries include Botswana, Fiji, Germany, Guyana, Israel, Kenya, Malaysia, Mauritius, Myanmar, New Zealand, Oman, Russia. Did you hear what I said? Seychelles, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Tanzania, Uganda, and the United Kingdom. Also, according to senior Russian officials, the BRIC countries Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are in the process of developing their own currency that will be presented as the organization's upcoming summit in South Africa. Below is a recap of countries stepping away from the reliance of the U.S. dollars. Let's read this. Saudi Arabia enters trade alliances with China, Russia, India, Pakistan, and 4 Central Asian nations to step further away from the reliance of the U.S. dollar. It's not just the reliance, it's the oppression. China and France completes first LNG gas trade using Chinese yuan, ending reliance on the U.S. dollar for energy trades. There goes the oil and gas sanctions. China and Brazil to settle trades in their own currencies, ditching the U.S. dollar. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. BRICS are developing a new currency. State Duma Deputy Chairman says Saudi Arabia partners with China to build a Chinese oil refinery for 3.7 billion yuan or 12.2 billion U.S. dollars. Kenya signs a deal with Saudi Arabia and the UAE to buy oil with Kenyan shillings instead of U.S. dollars. Guys, it's over. Association of Southeast Asian Nations considers dropping the U.S. dollar, the euro, the yen, and the British pound for local currency financial settlements. The trumpets are going so fast, just like we expected. Babylon is falling. The petrodollar, the evil, dominant factor in the wars for the last 200 or 300 years, have been pushed by this. and the twisting of arms of nations to do things they wouldn't normally do, to accept the central banking system, things like that, to accept the vaccinations. We're seeing the end times with our very eyes, guys. In this lifetime, we are the last generation. Now, in the book of Revelation, we talked about this, and we kind of ended the Bible. We went through 22 chapters, and I tried to explain it the best way I could, in the sense that it was very simple. And we learned that what we already knew. But the book of Revelations was such a mystery to a lot of people because of the symbology, but it was quite simple. We found out that there's a new world order coming, and it was going to end up being a spiritual beast that would try to dominate everything. We're very close to that point now. Now, let me say this. On the downloads of the book of Revelation, there's 22 chapters on our website at earthwatchmusic.com. You saw that. And we had lowered the price to 10 cents per group. Usually it's 3 chapters. Chapter 12 was 1 because it's so long. But what was happening, guys, was people would buy 1 or 2, and it would be 20-cent transaction in PayPal. So that complicates things quite a bit. Instead of being able to just give it away for pennies, then PayPal takes that. Then you have to do the paperwork and dealing with taxes and keeping everything straight. So not to be greedy, we raised that 10 cents to $1. Now, it would cost you $7 to get all 22 chapters as we read through them verse by verse. But at that point, you're not giving it all to PayPal. And then if you have, we learned this in the last few days, quite a bit of things you have to do even if you're giving it all to PayPal. So just hang with us there on that, guys. I know that sounds like a big increase for $1, but you don't have to do that, because if you look below this video, you'll see in our playlist all of what is there, but it's free. My point was, in putting it into digital download, I had a request, because if they take down this channel for video like you're watching now or whatever, then all of those videos are gone. So if you want to, and I'm going to save myself one, because just reading the book along with yourself helps. I mean, you're going back and studying what we need to know. And so if you may be with a solar panel, with a laptop, with some headphones, and you say, well, what are we going through right now? And you try to flash back and catch the details involved, and you can quickly drop that information again to your own CD or your thumb drive, pop it in your laptop, and stay up to date. And it's comforting to have that. Many people enjoyed watching it. But again, that's why you see it went from $0.10 to $1, but they're all free below. So you can go through the free downloads below, or the free videos in the playlist, and a lot of times there's a way to download those depending on your software and save them yourselves, and it won't cost you anything. But that's why if you saw that you notice there was a price increase there from up to $1. That's why, because of the nightmare of the paperwork with PayPal getting all the proceeds and us being having to deal with it with our taxes for this year. But we're watching this, guys. It's moving very quickly. Another thing I want to talk about before I end this, in the chapter of Mark, I think it's 13, you guys look it up. I'm just going to go by memory. There's a verse that says, in those days when you shall be delivered up to the synagogues, and it's not verbatim, do not premeditate what you are to say. And guys, this is a message to the elect. It says, do not premeditate what you're going to say. In other words, okay, they've been told you, and your whole neighborhood said, man, you need to, or you and your family need to come to church. This is the greatest church we've ever seen. It's just down the block. There's one in every city. And you say, well, I'm not really interested. You know, I've studied the Bible on my own, and Some of the things I'm seeing going on down there at the church really doesn't fit the bill. Or maybe you don't say it, but you're thinking that, and you say, well, which might be a good thing to do, is say, well, maybe next week I'll try to get around. I'm kind of busy right now, whatever. But they're going to end up, whether it's friends and family or neighbors, pulling you into that church. And it could be simply that they're telling who's ever in charge of that church that they sure wish you could convince their friend or neighbor or family member to come in and join them. Would it get to the point to where you were forcibly brought to either bend that knee and take that mark or die? Could it become that? Well, again, going back to this Mark 13, do not premeditate if you're called up what you're to say. And what they're saying here is that the fact you'll be saying, oh man, what am I going to say? I mean, they've got you, the whole congregation is there in this big synagogue, and you're in the back room waiting to be called up to the pulpit and answer questions or whatever, and you're trying to think a mile a minute. Man, what am I going to say? What Bible verse would I use to speak out against what I'm seeing? You know, what should I do? What is he telling you in Mark? He's saying, do not premeditate what you're going to say. Don't think about it. Don't strain and stress yourself. Why? Because at that time, if you're doing that, you're going to block out the voice of God. Because he knows exactly where you're at. He knows you're one of the elect, because you would not be in this particular verse, in this situation, if you were not. Because the elect are chosen to destroy this evil. He said, do not premeditate what you're going to say, because you're not going to hear my voice. But you go up before them, and when you open your mouth, they're going to hear me speak through you, and not verbatim, and that's going to change everything. There's nothing more powerful than that two-edged sword. It will change everything, and more than likely it would be on a world TV station by that point, guys, for all of us that are going to be called up. So again, think about it. Go read Mark 13. What are you going to say when they do that to you? You say nothing. You open your mind and you pray for the Lord God, the name of Christ, to come through you and speak through you and change the television audience, change the audience that's there, and let that word of God cut through. And by that time, it's going to be suppressed. We're already seeing the closing of churches and all the other madness that's going on. Could be, Bibles could be outlawed as we know them. It will be the new religion, the new locust army that we talked about in Revelation, with the breastplates of the priest, the faces of men. What are you going to do when you're called up? You're going to empty your mind and you're going to pray. You're not going to panic and say, man, I remember this verse, or I wrote this or that. No, you got to empty that vessel, because he cannot fill a full vessel. And the elect will be called up at that time to change the world through his voice. It's amazing, isn't it, guys, to live in these times? It's amazing. So you got to be prepared. And even though we had went through the book of Revelation, you'd say, well, we were at the end. But then a lot of that was Christ talking to John. So it's a good thing to go back into Mark, Matthew, Luke, and those books, and look at what Christ was talking about the details. We know what's coming. We know that the great beast is political and religious. But what about the small details? Christ points those out in those books. So check those out, and that's going to be a study coming up about some of what Christ is talking about in Matthew and Mark and Luke about these end times. And just like this going up before the synagogue, we didn't mention that in Revelation, but isn't it a valuable piece of knowledge? God bless you guys. It's a heads up. Be safe.